Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Kinchy. I'm the director of the Kaufman Interfaith Institute. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual Abrahamic Dinner. Last year we were at the Masjid At-Tahid and had a wonderful time together, and we're anticipating another one this evening. Because I've got the mic, and because I'm so committed to what we're doing with the Kaufman Interfaith Institute, I'm going to take advantage of doing a little commercial. You have in your program about our 2018 Year of Interfaith Friendship. You may recall, some of you have been involved with us for a number of years, that in 2012 we had the Year of Interfaith Understanding. In 2015, and by the way, we had over 300 events in congregations, colleges, various groups, the symphony, the art museum, all over the community, 300 events. In 2015, we had our Year of Interfaith Service, where people from the various religious traditions met together with people from our service organizations, from food pantries and Habitat for Humanity and environmental groups to do cleanups. We did service together. I like to think of that first year of understanding as involving our heads. And service involves our hands. And this year is our Year of Interfaith Friendship involving our hearts. We want to not just talk about our faith. We want to go beyond just acting our faith in service. We want to develop some real friendships. Because even though we come from different faith traditions, we have very common values. All of our traditions tell us to love God, love the neighbor, and love the stranger. So we're committed to that common mission that we all have in our traditions. But we want to also get to know each other as people and their interests. So our strategy for the Year of Interfaith Friendship is to bring people together around interest groups. So we have everything from interfaith foodies that like to eat together. And at their next meeting, they're going to cook together. We actually have a kitchen where they're going to learn to cook with each other. Interfaith Interwoven is a group that gets together and does knitting and crocheting, and Deet is the leader of that, and they meet here at Temple Emmanuel, and it's an interfaith group, so join that if you're so interested. We have an interfaith book group. Some of you were just in that group this afternoon from 3 to 4:30, and we're currently reading, we read a book by Mustafa Akol, who was one of our guests here a year ago, called The Islamic Jesus. Now we're reading a book about Miroslav Volf, professor of theology and head of a center at Yale University, and his book is Allah, A Christian Response. So that's one of the groups that's meeting. We do scriptural reasoning, where we read from our various scripture and talk about it. Cinematic Conversations happens every month, where we watch a movie together at Woodland Celebration and then have discussions afterwards. Minds and Medicine, chess playing, fitness, mystics and contemplatives, and an art group called Interfaith Imagination. We hope to be adding to this as the year progresses, as the next academic year, as this continues. So if you're interested in any one of these, go to our website, which is down below, interfaithunderstanding.org, and click on the Year of Interfaith Friendship, and you'll see these there, and you can sign up for them at that place. Also, if you're interested in starting one of these, let us know, because we're not trying to control this. We want this to be indigenous, and if those who want to get together with people to have like interests, this is a great opportunity to do it. So again, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you. Some of you know that day after tomorrow I head off to Cambridge University for 2 months, and I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about what we have here in our community in terms of real commitment to interfaith. So welcome, and at this point, I'm happy to have Phyllis Dogru, who is going to welcome you on behalf of the Niagara Foundation. This has been a partnership we've done with the Niagara Foundation for I forget how many years, but we're really wonderful to work with you. So, Phyllis?
Good evening.
Good evening.
For a moment, please think, how do you feel if I tell you that someone will give you $1 million at the end of the program? You all feel happy, aren't you? and you are smiling also. Well, even sound is good. Please look around. We may belong different race, different religion. We may separated by the ethnicity, color, or origin of country. But after all, we are all human beings. Well, our feelings are similar. We can feel happiness, we can feel sorrow. The Niagara Foundation was founded in 2004, and the founders envisioned an institution that could bring people together from all walks of life to celebrate diversity in a shared society. Tonight, on behalf of the Niagara Foundation, I would like to welcome you Grand Rapids' annual Abrahamic Dinner. Some of you already know what Niagara Foundation is, but please allow me briefly, I will tell you a little bit more since microphone is with me, right? Well, it is a nonprofit organization, strives to promote social cohesion by fostering the civic conversations and sustained relationships between people of different cultures and faiths. To reach its goal, Niagara Foundation has a lot of activities in 9 different states in Midwest and 22 branches. Some of the activities is like this Abrahamic Dinner, Dialogue Dinner, Friendship Dinner, and intercultural receptions, luncheon forums, seminars, panels, lectures. Intercultural trips. Used to be to Turkey, but right now to all over the world. And my personal favorite activity is the annual International Children Festival. This year it will be in Troy on May 6th. I know it's a little bit far, but it's worth the travel 2 hours. Because it is a whole day event and at least 15 to 20 countries involved, and all the children are performing their cultures in the form of dancing, singing, or exhibits, or food. It's a very nice event. So I recommend you to do the trip with your children or grandchildren if you have time also. We are here together tonight, and let us use this opportunity to celebrate our commonalities and appreciate our differences. Let us open dialogues for collaborations, make new friends. We each have wonderful values to contribute to this community. There are also so much unfairness and suffering around the world. To overcome the difficulties easier and faster, we have to work together hand in hand with mutual understanding. This gatherings gives me hope. I also believe the power of hope is the first step for the better world for all of us. Before ending my talk, I would like to thank you, the Kaufman Interfaith Institute and Dr. Doug Kinchy, for all the hard work for putting this program together. And also I would like to thank Temple and Manuel and Rabbi Shedek for hosting us in this beautiful room. I also thank you for all of you joining us, and I hope you will enjoy tonight's speakers, conversations, and friendship, and also food. Well, maybe no one gives us $1 million, but I think building a friendship is priceless. Thank you.
Anyone hungry out there? A few minutes, I have a microphone, you know. I want to welcome everyone on behalf of the Temple Emmanuel family. Welcome to our beautiful synagogue. If it's your first time here, raise your hand. First time here ever? Wow. So please, after dinner and our speakers, we have some lovely displays to take a look at. Mill about and take a look. We're happy that you're here. So I thought about this morning. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all sitting in a synagogue together, about to eat food that follows the rules of halal. This must be a foretaste of the world to come. We Jews call this the Olam Haba. If only gathering like this together was as easy for Jews and Muslims and Christians the whole world over. How blessed we are to be here tonight. A reminder, I think, of what a very special place West Michigan is to live. So just a word or two of Torah. I have the mic in front of me, and I'm going to weave it into a prayer for dinner. So it was here on Saturday evening, March 31st, and in Jewish households all over the world that Jews began the second night of Passover. Passover is for Jews one of the most widely observed holidays of them all. The holiday is rooted in the book of Exodus, and every year we retell the story of our journey from slavery to freedom, with lots of special ceremony and matzah, the unleavened bread of our ancestors. We endeavor for a few moments to understand how those that came before us were forced to live, and how sweet it was when that yoke of slavery was broken. On this second night of Passover, back on March 31st, we began a tradition called the counting of the Omer. The counting of the Omer. We are bidden by the Torah to count the days between the second night of Passover and the arrival of the next significant Jewish holiday called Shavuot. Christians sometimes know this as Pentecost. It was 7 weeks after the Exodus date. Our sages teach that the Israelites, the children of Israel, were there at the foot of Mount Sinai to receive the laws that would come to change the face of humanity forever. The English translation of the Hebrew holiday means weeks. Shavuot means weeks. 49 days between these two events. 7 weeks from the Exodus to the revelation at Sinai, like bookends, if you will. Exodus, Revelation, that journey. So as a community, we count the days, thinking about this anniversary. But we're also encouraged to do some inner reflection during these 7 weeks, to reflect on our very being, to pause as, well, the cool spring takes us to hopefully a warmer spring down the road a bit. We're asked to commit ourselves to some personal change. I think tonight, as we gather for this annual Abrahamic Dinner, thanks to the Niagara Foundation, there is reason for all of us to reflect. Our interfaith community in Grand Rapids continues to thrive and to grow, to be the source of new and enduring friendships, but I'm sorry to say there is still some work to be done. Some work that has to be done to break down the barriers and the stereotypes and the outright hatred that still takes place in our community. There are still some people in West Michigan who see a Muslim woman shopping in Meijer in traditional clothing and tell her to her face, "We don't want you here." there are still some people, some students in West Michigan, that fake a sneeze when walking by a Jewish student and utter, "A Jew, a Jew." I would like everyone here tonight, as the 18th day of our counting begins, and that 18 number represents life for Jews. Chai is life. With the sun, well, what sun? With the setting of the sun, to reflect on what we're doing to break down those barriers of division. When we hear them, and we all hear them, I think, in our daily lives, what are we doing? Let's ask ourselves, what are we doing to eliminate those words of intolerance as we go about the normal course of our business? The custom for counting the day, counting this period of the Omer, is to offer a blessing, a thanks to God for a way for us to remember that freedom, the freedom we received in Egypt, and the laws we got at Sinai impel us not just to celebrate that which we gained, but to understand and to recognize the responsibilities we all have to ourselves and the world around us to do what is right, to do what we should do based upon the words God gave us. So I'm going to offer this blessing before we have dinner. The blessing for the counting of the Omer period tonight is the 18th day as the sun, what sun? As the sun sets. I say, Hineni muchan umzuman l'kayem mitzvat aseh shel sefirat ha'omer. I am ready to fulfill the commandment of counting this day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer. Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with commandments, commanding us to count this day between Passover and Shavuot. Today is the 18th day, which is 2 weeks and 4 days of this period. One last blessing. I'm going to pretend I have in my hand a piece of bread. Bread is the staff of life, and so we offer this blessing before we eat together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hamotzi lecha min haaretz. Blessed are you, Lord our God, who brings forth bread from the earth. Let's say together, Amen. Some say amen, we say amen. It's the same words, right? It's the same words. So the food is here because I picked it up. I know it's here. So when we have dinners at Temple that are buffet style, I look for the table that seems to be the hungriest and let them go first. So I'm going to ask our two reserve tables how hungry you are and ask them to go first. And I'll walk around and kind of, how hungry are you guys?
A big part of what we do at Abrahamic Dinners is exactly what I'm interrupting right now. And that's the table conversation. It's wonderful that you're doing that. While we're gathering and getting ready for our three very special speakers, I wanted to remind you, I was talking with Ali Magid and with Rabbi Shattuck. Back in 2012, when we had our Year of Interfaith, when we were planning our Year of Interfaith Understanding, we had a meeting in that back room there, and a dinner meeting. And at one point, Ali came up to me and said, it's time for our prayers. Where can we do our prayers? So I checked with Rabbi Shattuck. He says, well, just come on into the sanctuary. So we got in here, and they says, now, because, the temple is not square with the streets. And they says, well, which way is east? So if you want a taste of what interfaith is all about, this Christian was explaining to the Muslims in a Jewish temple which direction east was. So we're very pleased to have you here this evening for what we call listening to new voices. At many of our previous Abrahamic dinners, we've heard from clergy, and in most cases, that means men. So we thought as we were planning, wouldn't it be great to hear from the women in our tradition? So in the spirit of Sarah and Hagar and Mary, we've invited 3 women to speak to us. And I want to say that all 3 of them I consider friends. They have done wonderful things to represent and recognize and live out their own faith, while at the same time being very active and appreciative and accepting and working with people of other faiths. So I don't want to say much because you have something in your notice about each one of them. But first I want to introduce Margarita Solis-Deal, who is the director of the Dominican Center at the Marywood. And she is our partner for a lot of our interfaith activities. Many of our meetings are held at their site, and she's been a wonderful partner. So Margarita, you're first.
Good evening. Buenas noches. That was good. Just testing your international skills here. I would like to take this time to offer my words of gratitude for Dr. Kinsey and the Kaufman Interfaith Institute and the Niagara Foundation for inviting me to share some thoughts and words with you during this interfaith evening. My name is Margarita Solis-Deal, and I currently serve as the director of Dominican Center at Marywood, a ministry of the Grand Rapids Dominican Sisters. And along with my interfaith sisters, I too would like to play my part in weaving this interfaith fabric, which could be used to make a welcoming shawl to offer hospitality to immigrants and refugees, or used to make a colorful cover for a dinner table, used to feed the hungry, or used to make a warm blanket for those who sleep on Division Avenue and Fountain Street. Oh, what an evening, contemplating on the lives of Sarah, Hagar, and Mary felt like drinking from a fountain of wisdom. These were women of grace, women of great suffering, women of beauty, women of varying skin tones, and women of obedience to God and not man. Each of them gift and each of them sacred. Their lives weave into one another, and as they do, we are transformed by their lives and really have no other choice but to be woven into their interfaith tapestry, because understanding each of them in this greater context gives us the full picture of our own faith story. Speaking of story, I start with an invitation to all of you to listen to a story. I know that each of you will hold these words in a sacred container, as times sharing personal experiences can be like entering a vulnerable space. I lean towards all of you with the use of story because it is in this space that relationship happens. And without right relationship that exists in the space between us, behind us, and beside us, interfaith relationships will struggle to exist. The story is about a woman of great wisdom. It is the story of my own mother. My mother, Felisa Carrion Solis, is one of 14 children. She was born in Puerto Rico and immigrated to the United States when she was 12 years old. She met my father, Andres, an immigrant from Mexico, who arrived into this country when he was 18 years old. They fell in love, married, and within 5 years, they had 4 children. I fast forward through stories of grasping for cultural identity in American society, which was the cause of great pride and discrimination. Through stories of celebrations of family traditions and milestones. Through stories of grief over the sudden death of my father. And I will fast forward over the stories of the faith formation gained through the involvement of a Latino Catholic parish in Lorain, Ohio, called La Capilla de Sagrado Corazón, Sacred Heart Chapel. I fast forward through all these stories to the story of my mother as she is today, because it is through her now that I am gaining what is required to respect and honor interfaith understanding. You see, my mother has Alzheimer's disease, an illness that slowly strips one of memory and one of life's stories. She's in her last stages, but it seems, like I've been saying, she's been in her last stages for the past couple years. It is rare to hear a recognizable word from her, except for occasionally I will hear "que linda," which means how cute in Spanish. When I lift a doll that has a warm facial expression in her line of vision, and she catches it, is the expression that she uses. She is dependent on all others for all her daily living activities, weighs a little over 90 pounds, and her life is a mystery of how she holds on from day to day. And through this way of existing, where she is lifted with a Hoyer lift from bed to wheelchair and back again, eats very little, she exudes a mysterious peace. Throughout all the years that I just fast-forwarded, my mother has been a source of great wisdom for me. She has made me aware that to care for a parent in their aging process, one realizes how to love imperfection, to love with unconditional acceptance, and to surrender to love. My mother today continues to teach me life lessons and is presently showing me the intersection between the human condition and the holy surrender. She resides in an assisted living facility in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I do my best to be with her every weekend. Our visits are still filled with connection as she maintains a strong grip as I hold her hand. At times, I believe our souls connect, especially when I find that visual space where she sees me and smiles for a second or two until she fades out again. These are brief moments that last a lifetime for me. Daily, she surrenders to her physical condition, and daily her peace is strengthened. She has inspired me to learn more about this holy surrender, a surrender that Mary, Sarah, and Hagar knew wholeheartedly and embraced with a resounding yes. I rely on my faith and spiritual life to make sense of the day-to-day life of my mother, and I find myself on the journey to strengthen my relationship with the divine that allows holy surrender to even be possible. I look to faith women, both those living and those that came before me, for wisdom. I often look to Mary, the mother of Jesus, for courage, for hope, and for insight on how to love in hard times, and to surrender in love, especially in caring for my mother through the very stages of dementia. Mary was a young girl when she was visited by the angel Gabriel, who spoke to her saying, "Do not be afraid. You have won God's favor. Look, you are to conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you must name him Jesus," which I'm learning is Yeshua in Hebrew and Aramaic, which conveys God delivers or saves. It was at that moment when Mary said yes to what was asked of her that her suffering began. My own faith tradition helps me enter Mary's story. I know she experienced life of a pregnant teen who probably lost favor with her community because of her out-of-wedlock pregnancy. That she lived a life in poverty and lived with minimal means. That she lived a life of a refugee, an immigrant, as she and her family were forced to leave their homeland for fear of persecution. And she lived life as a mother who never abandoned her son and bore witness to his great suffering and gruesome death on a cross, loving him each step through his own holy surrender. But in my entering into the life of Mary to understand her holy surrender, I cannot stop at the boundaries of my own faith tradition. The Bible, for example, is 95% male-oriented. Of 1,426 names in the Bible, only 111 names are those of women. Mary of Nazareth, however, is among the women most mentioned in the New Testament. To understand Mary, then, I looked to the context of her world during the time of her earthly existence. And because of this, I go to my Jewish sisters for wisdom. Mary was born into Judaism, and her faith was formed by listening to, or perhaps reading the Torah, and listening to the stories of the prophets in the synagogue. This is the faith tradition she followed, and it is this faith that played a role in her love for the divine. I also go to my Muslim sisters to understand Mary, and to the Quran to learn more about Mary. Referred to as Maryam, the Quran mentions her 34 times in 32 verses, and she is revered by the Muslim community and is seen as the best of all women. So I go to the Muslim community to know about her and understand the role she plays in the faith formation of the community. I can only imagine that Mary herself sought refuge in the stories of Sarah and Hagar and found commonality as they all shared powerful birthing stories, which I am sure if you ask any mother who birthed a child, that there is a natural understanding of holy surrender. These women all played significant roles in also giving birth to the faith traditions many of us follow today. My mother is a woman of great faith, and prayer played a significant role in her life. We meet on a spiritual level now, and as I learn more about holy surrender from an interfaith perspective, my own faith is strengthened. My own resolve to live life in holy surrender is encouraged, and I lean into relationships with those who share different faith traditions than mine, because it is through this discovery that I lean closer to my mother in her final days. Sorry. Leaning in and understanding and respecting the faith of others does not mean that I need to give up my own tradition. but by moving closer to the other, my own faith formation develops. The story of my relationship with my mother has influenced my own approach to interfaith experiences. The search for holy surrender is a surrender to love, love of self, love of neighbor, and love of God. The journey to understand holy surrender has been enriched and made clearer by women of wisdom from different faith traditions, as there are so many rich examples of women who have fully given into divine love. While there are days I leave my mother's bedside wondering if it would be the last day that I touch and see her, and at times I pray that God, with infinite wisdom, would take her to rest in eternity. But most days I leave with such a holy appreciation for how her spirit continues to transform mine. So I end this reflection as I started this. I, along with my interfaith sisters, would like to play a part in weaving this interfaith fabric, which could be used to make a welcoming shawl to offer hospitality to immigrants and refugees, or used to make a colorful cover for a dinner table used to feed the hungry, or used to make a warm blanket for those who sleep on Division and Fountain Street. It is my only way to understand holy surrender. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margarita. That was wonderful. Our next speaker is Shelby Bruseloff, who I first knew as a student at Grand Valley. She was president of the Hillel there. She was an intern at the Kaufman Interfaith Institute. Then after graduating, went on and now works with the statewide Hillel group. We're so happy to have you here, Shelby.
Good evening. Thank you to the Kaufman Interfaith Institute for inviting me to speak tonight. This is a really special night for me, as I have come full circle from helping to plan this event in years past to now being a speaker. It's an incredible feeling, and tonight feels so special as well that we are recognizing and honoring young women of Abrahamic faiths. When I was a sophomore at Grand Valley, I helped to start a sorority chapter. At one of our meetings, a member announced an upcoming event. She said, "We're going to have the best Christmas party. There's going to be Christmas cookies, Christmas sweaters, Christmas cheer, and Secret Santa." And I said to the girl next to me, "What about those who don't celebrate Christmas?" You know, I'm all for the Christmas spirit, but I felt excluded from this new community of mine. I decided that my contribution for this event would be a massive tray of latkes, or potato pancakes, that we eat on Hanukkah. When the time came for everyone to line up and get their Christmas cookies, all of the girls started to whisper about the big tray full of something other than Christmas cheer. And finally, someone shouted, "What are those?" And I replied with, "Well, since I don't celebrate Christmas, it would only be appropriate to share with you all a part of my religion. As I am Jewish, and tonight happens to be one of the nights of Hanukkah, I decided to bring you all latkes." I talked with the girl who planned the program and worked with her in the future to come up with more inclusive programming, such as an end-of-the-year celebration instead of a Christmas party. Throughout my time as an undergraduate, it felt as though I was constantly explaining my religious identity. Whether it be, "What are latkes?" or "Why are you always busy on Friday nights?" I was the first Jew many of my friends at school had met, and I was completely surprised by the level of ignorance displayed. I was even asked once, "Where are your horns?" I thought these stereotypes were stomped out by my parents or grandparents. Yet many days proved that to be the contrary. Even most of my professors had never interacted with a Jewish student before, and had just as many questions as my peers did. They would call me out in the middle of class and say, "Oh, you're Jewish, please explain something in a non-religious course." Well, I was thankful to have a Jewish community on campus with Hillel, so I could be connected to other Jewish students. I didn't want any minority religious student who might not have the same support to go through what I did. Too many of the students and faculty are religiously illiterate, and it really hindered my experience, as I'm sure it hindered many others. With nowhere to turn, Katie Gordon, who used to work with the Kaufman Interfaith Institute and Grand Valley's Department for Inclusion and Equity, magically appeared at a meeting. And she invited me to join several other students at a leadership training with the Interfaith Youth Corps in Chicago. This training helped me realize that this feeling of not belonging on my predominantly Christian campus is one that is felt throughout the country, and students were actually doing something about it. I went back to my campus filled with excitement, and I helped to start an interfaith student organization. This led to my work with the Kaufman Interfaith Institute, and most importantly, I brought a kids' ball pit, like at McDonald's or Chuck E. Cheese's, one of those big ball pits. I brought that to the middle of Grand Valley's campus, and I had students get in the ball pit with someone they didn't know to talk about their own worldviews. My senior year, I was in a research methods class, and we had to come up with a survey for our fellow classmates. So my question to the class was, can you name 3 non-Christian religious holidays? If yes, please list. Now, I thought this would be an easy question, but this class proved to be wrong. There were 18 students, and out of those, only 3 said yes, and out of their 9 answers, only 3 were correct. Other answers included Father's Day, Valentine's Day. I thought it was a joke too, really? It was a simple question. I got so frustrated that the future social workers weren't culturally competent around religion that I decided to conduct my own research around this issue and present it to Grand Valley School of Social Work. I spent a year and a half collecting and analyzing data with the help of Dr. Brandon Hagar, and he said, "I'm going to get you into one of our school's faculty meetings," and he did. And here I was with a room full of my very own professors, and I'm lecturing them on how to improve their classroom. It was a wild moment, but also one of the best moments, as I felt confident that this was the right meeting to help social work students become more culturally competent. But more importantly, it was the right meeting to ensure students who are not Christian felt comfortable in their classrooms. The School of Social Work ended up creating a class called Experiencing Religious Pluralism in West Michigan, where students at the bachelor's and master's level received an introduction to religious traditions, learned more about religion and social justice, and visited several places of worship. To see this kind of change continually motivates me that while I'm young, I'm capable of this work. And since I graduated in 2016, I've been working with 10 college campuses around Michigan to help grow and sustain their Jewish student life. I love the work that I do, but my not-so-secretly favorite program is the Interfaith Shabbat Dinners. To help my students create the spaces to build relationships with students of all worldviews is an aspect of my job that I truly value. There's a quote by Hillel the Elder, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when?" And I think of this quote when I'm working on college campuses with other administrators, faculty, and staff. When I look around the room at those meetings, I am typically one of a few women, the youngest, and the only one who's not Christian. Those in the meetings don't expect me to speak up, as they will seldom even look at me or address me for whatever reason until I start talking. Being a fresh face in the interfaith world doesn't stop me from speaking up about what is right. If I can start an interfaith student organization, if I can lead research on students' religious experiences, if I can help my students host campus-wide interfaith programming, I can most definitely sit at that table. And if I can do it, you can do it. We need everyone's help to create more inclusive spaces. This goes beyond those belonging to Abrahamic traditions, men or women, young or old. With 2018 being the year of interfaith friendship, we need our LGBTQ friends, our friends of color, our secular friends, our Baha'i friends, Jain, Quaker, and Hindu friends. Everybody has a seat at the table, and we are all ready to work together to ensure no one is left behind in this ever-growing interfaith society. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Our third speaker is Zahabia Ahmed-Usmani, who has been very active in the West Michigan community. She's the chair of the board of LEDA, the Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance. And when we met her and learned about her commitment, we said, you gotta come work for Kaufman. So Zahabia is now a part-time staff person with the Kaufman Interfaith Institute and a wonderful colleague. Zahabia.
Thank you all so much for having me here today. Thank you to Kaufman and the Niagara Institute. I'm deeply honored and humbled to share a little bit of my faith with you today. Thank you to Temple Emmanuel for so warmly welcoming us into this sacred space. And thank you to Margarita and Shelby for I'm so blessed by your presence and enriched by your words. In Surah Hujurat, verse 13, the Holy Quran says, O mankind, we created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that ye may know each other, not that ye may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you, and Allah is full of knowledge and fully informed. As we sit at this unique Abrahamic dinner, reflecting on the lessons we can learn from Sarah, Hagar, and the wives of Abraham in the Islamic tradition, I cannot help but connect their story to God's intention to create a diversity of nations and tribes. In Islam, we believe that God promised Sarah and Prophet Abraham a child, and that after much praying, trying, and waiting, Sarah gave Abraham permission to marry Hagar, an Egyptian pharaoh's daughter, who gave birth to a son, Prophet Ishmael. After Prophet Ishmael's birth, Allah, or God, asked Prophet Abraham to lead Hagar into the desert and leave them there. Furthermore, Prophet Abraham was instructed not to tell Hagar anything other than this was the will of Allah, upon which Hagar knew she would not be forsaken. Through Hagar's devotion and obedience to Allah, a flourishing community was created in present-day Mecca with an abundance of water where there was once none. Most importantly, amongst Ishmael's descendants would be Prophet Muhammad, the leader of my Muslim tribe. Meanwhile, just as Allah promised, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, whose descendants would be our cousins, the Jewish and Christian tribes. Sarah and Hagar's role in the creation of our Abrahamic faiths was fundamental. Had Allah willed it, we could have all descended from Prophet Ishmael or from Prophet Isaac, but that was not his will. God has put into motion the blueprint for the diversity we see in our world today. Furthermore, God has challenged us to, quote, know each other. The Quran supports this notion in Surah Hud, verse 18, where Allah says, if thy Lord had so willed, he would have made mankind one people, but they will not cease to be diverse. Unfortunately, as we know, diversity does not mean inclusion. And some research even shows that without engagement, diversity can result in an isolation of thoughts and beliefs. The last thing we want is for our communities of worship to become echo chambers. Our work to know each other must be done through active engagement with the diversity around us. In Arabic, the word know has a more nuanced meaning than the way we think of know in English, where it is more passive and cerebral. This form of know in Arabic is actually an active verb, which means to embrace, accept, and love. God has given us a number of gifts to do this righteous work. One of the gifts, as I mentioned, is the knowledge of the intention of diversity as a blueprint for all of time to come. But how do we work to know each other? By embracing, accepting, and loving one another. Thankfully, humans are social creatures. We need interactions with others, and forming interfaith friendships and engaging in interfaith dialogue is one of the ways we descendants of Sarah and Hagar can get to know one another on a deeper level. With friendships over common interests, like with the affinity groups Kaufman has started, we are initiating this relationship. However, to truly know each other will require effort, trust, vulnerability, and time. Developing friendships is an important concept in the Quran, where 10 types of friends are mentioned. I am so thankful for the variety of friendships I have and the new ones I am constantly making through interfaith work. One of the new friends I recently made through interfaith initiatives in Grand Haven is with a gentleman named Wes, who is a Baha'i. Last week, I called to apologize for not reminding him early enough about a meeting happening immediately following spring break and explained how I was busy getting the kids ready to go back to school. He immediately called me back, apologizing himself profusely, saying that he understood how hard it is to work and be a mom. Although I do not know if he has any children of his own, he explained that his mom had lived through picking cotton in the South, segregation, going back to school to become a teacher, and then becoming a teacher and working full-time while raising 3 children. His reverence for his mother got me talking about my mother, who was an immigrant and also worked a full-time job while raising my brother and I. Then he asked me the most humbling question. Did you ever ask your mom, how did she do it? While growing up, I always appreciated my parents' hard work, and because they were rarely home and didn't complain much, rather they prayed or rested, I took for granted how she must have felt and how many hardships and sacrifices she must have made. And when I breezily said, well, I know how she did it, he challenged me saying, no, did you ever ask her, how did she do it? In that moment, I was moved to tears, thinking of the reverence that I as a Muslim should have for my mother, and how now as a mother, I realized she was modeling for me how to balance your religious duties with the responsibilities you have to your family. This sahib, or casual friend, who I just struck up a conversation with, deeply wanted to help me in so many ways that I was completely taken aback. I immediately realized my selfishness and arrogance and quickly asked God for forgiveness. I also said a heartfelt prayer for my mother. We talked about many other things, and many words of wisdoms were shared on topics from track to thinking of meeting times as times to connect with people rather than just a task to be done. Time after time, interfaith friendships have taught me how to be a better Muslim. Although I strive to be the type of friend who enriches others, I selfishly feel I have gained so much more than I have given. I have been so thankful for my role at Kaufman and the privilege of interacting and building relationships with people of all faiths or belief traditions, and I believe this work is sacred. The relationship among the Abrahamic faiths holds a special place in Islam. The Quran often refers to the people of the book, and the Quran says in Surah Ankabut, verse 46, "And argue ye not with the people of the book, except with means better than mere argument, apart from those among them who inflict wrong or an injury upon you. Tell them that we believe in the revelation which has come down to us and that which came down to you. Our Allah and your Allah is one, and it is to him we submit." One of the things I have learned from Dr. Kinchi is another gift that the Abrahamic faiths have been given are their unique points of intersection that the faith traditions share with the others. For Muslims and Christians, we share our love for Jesus. For Muslims and Jews, we share our understanding of strict monotheism. Jews and Christians share the Hebrew scriptures. While there are fundamental differences in our traditions, our places of intersection provide those touch points we can use to know each other. As I look out upon all of you interfaith friends in this room, I truly feel like I'm preaching to the choir. However, with half of Americans saying they have never met a Muslim, I can't help but feel like there's still so much work to be done. Fortunately, the research also tells us that knowing someone of any other faith tradition helps to increase positive attitudes towards other faith groups. As each of us work toward building interfaith bridges, I am reminded that each time Muslims pray, In addition to bringing peace and blessings upon Prophet Muhammad and his family, we also ask God to bring peace and blessings upon the family of Abraham. A way some Muslims might look at this as a way some Muslims might look at this is that as a community, we are actively praying for humankind during each prayer, and we are actively praying for our Christian brothers and sisters, Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters. And while appreciating the intentions of our prayers is important, it is more important that our actions follow suit. As we know, the most loved by Allah are those who actively work to bring into realization that which has been prescribed. Let us join together to actively honor the notion of bringing peace upon Prophet Abraham as we do in our prayers by knowing our friends of other nations and tribes. Thank you.
Thank you, Zahabia, and thank all of you. It's wonderful to listen to new voices. We've had that opportunity this evening. I also want to point out something that's often missed, but the Baha'i faith, which has been mentioned, is also considered an Abrahamic faith. And I welcome the Baha'i friends that are with us this evening. This has been a wonderful evening. And while I'm asking each of the speakers and Dr. Phyllis Gogru and Rabbi Shattuck to come up for some presentations from the Niagara Foundation, I'll remind you to fill out your evaluations. Just leave them on your table while we gather here. And we want to conclude with some presentations that Niagara Foundation has for our speaker and for our host. And thank you, Rabbi, and your staff for the wonderful dinner and for hosting us in your wonderful facility.
When I hear the word staff, I say, where are we supposed to be, right? So when we end tonight, I would ask a favor of everyone. We're going to bring out some large trash cans. If you could just give us a hand and in a couple of minutes, just put your plate or your utensils in the garbage. So it'll just help us clean up our space.
Okay. First to Margarita Solis-Deal. And Shelby Bruseloff. And Zahabia Ahmed-Usmani. And a presentation to our host, Rabbi Shattuck.
Thank you. Oh, it's beautiful. Wow, beautiful.
You can take that and have seconds. Well, thank you all for coming. It's been a wonderful evening. And
This is for you.
oh, thank you. So we look forward to next year and another Abrahamic dinner, and we hope to see you back then. Thank you very much.